Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the East Lindsey series. This is the biggest district in Lincolnshire, containing 188 civil parishes. Without further ado, here's today's offering. Welcome back to glorious East Lindsey, everybody. Plenty of open Lincolnshire countryside to see in this one. And a very interesting village too. One that's quite a distance from north to south. I'm standing at the southernmost point here, right on the boundary. You can see behind me there's a village sign. Looks like there's a windmill, or used to be a windmill in this place. Welcome to the parish of Horsington. The East Lindsey series is sponsored by Gainsborough Cycles, 01427 617 752. For all your cycling needs, this is your one-stop shop, located at 20 Ropery Road, Gainsborough, or online at gainsboroughcycles.com. There's a link in the description. Gainsborough Cycles, ask for Trevor Halstead. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like, and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Horsington, Horsa's Farmstead. Round 11 in East Lindsey brings us to the village and the parish of Horsington, situated around 5 miles from Horncastle and 6 miles from Bardney. Once again, it's a parish that borders the River Witham, although that fact is far from obvious. It's due to an arm of land which dips underneath Bucknall's boundaries and runs southwest towards the river, giving the parish the tiniest of boundaries with North Kesteven. The parish also includes the hamlet of Poolham, which is situated to the east of the village and has a ruined 13th century chapel. Its name has nothing to do with horses, rather it's all to do with the landowners in Saxon times. This was Horsa's farmstead, and it appears in the Domesday Book as Horsintone. As a village, Horsington doesn't have a great deal. There's a village hall and a church, but that's really all there is amenities wise. However, what it lacks in that department is more than made up for by way of its rich history. This one has no fewer than 4 patches of earthworks. Not all of them are accessible, but they all have their own stories to tell. As the village sign suggests, there was once a windmill, and there used to be at least 2 pubs. One now has a doll that stares out of an upstairs window at passers-by. Very disturbing. Let's go and find it. We begin our walk around Horsington on Moor Lane at a local business, Charles H. Hill. This is a lawnmower shop. Directly opposite this is a former chapel. Horsington had 2, one primitive Methodist, the other Wesleyan. This was the latter, and it was founded in 1837. Now we're on the B1190, also known as the Long and Twisty Main Street. Here's a bus shelter which is served by the number 30 between Lincoln and Horncastle. And there's a parish notice board in here, so that's the ideal opportunity to mark Horsington off the list. 177 to go. Horsington was once a much bigger settlement. On the first bend in the road, look to your left and you'll see what looks like a field. That is in fact a patch of earthworks. There are at least 4 sets of these around the village, some of which show evidence of medieval ridge and furrow. On the other side of the road here is the Windmill. This was called Hill's Mill, and these buildings are all that remain. It was a tower mill built in 1813 which worked until the early 20th century. The tower is now a single-storey stump with a corrugated iron roof. For the next few minutes, the road becomes residential in nature. Horsington hasn't seen a great deal of modern development down the years, barring the odd bit of infilling. It's remained a linear settlement, and it's never been earmarked for any huge and overly intrusive housing estates, unlike Bucknall. As we reach the next bend, we see a big white house standing in front of Manor Farm. Manor Farm has another of the earthworks sites. If you were to follow the public footpath south from here, you'd reach a medieval moat, clearly visible on overhead images. Horsington Snooker Club next. Snooker is one of only 2 sports that can be played in this village, and it's very popular in these parts. There's even a local snooker league. The other sport, indoor bowls, can be played here at the Charles Hill Community Hall, named in honour of the man behind the Lawnmower shop. He was also the chairman of the parish council for many years and a much loved and well respected village benefactor. As with the hall in Bucknall, this centre is often used by residents from both villages. Horsington Parish only has 5 listed buildings. 4 are within the village, the other is the chapel at Poolham. The manor house isn't one of them, madly, but the property next door certainly is. This is the Thatch, the only building in Horsington with a thatched roof, but as we'll discover, that wasn't always the case. Over the road is the first of 2 former pubs, the Baronet Inn, which has been turned into a charming residential property, a highlight of the village centre. The same can be said for the Last Post, which stands opposite. Now we come to the church dedicated to All Saints. This is not your typical East Lindsey church, and that's a fact made obvious by its building material, red brick. This is more like the kind of building we'd see typically in Nottinghamshire. It was built in 1860 to replace a previous Anglican church that had a thatched roof. At that time, Horsington's main landowners were Magdalen College, Oxford, who it's believed also provided the church organ. The college would also build and endow a school in Horsington, which still stands today. Let's make our way towards the school by continuing up the B1190. The school stands right at the northernmost tip of the village. Main Street has now become Horncastle Road, and it's a very residential affair between the two. However, that wasn't always the case. This stretch once featured the Elder Tree Inn. This was the first pub anywhere in the UK to sell Island Brew, a unique beer brewed on the Isle of Man that uses ingredients from Tristan da Cunha, the most remote inhabited island in the world. The eagle-eyed among you may have spotted the very disturbing doll in the upstairs window of the Elder Tree Inn, which looks out over passers-by. Now the road has turned northwards and we're heading towards Horncastle. Again, it's residential, but right at the end of civilization is the old school. This was built in 1861, a year after Magdalen College had replaced the church. At full capacity, this could hold 60 children. Nowadays, the local kids have to travel to school. Most of them go to neighbouring Bucknall. And it's in that direction that we're about to head once again as we make our way back to the beginning. Okay, so the remainder of the route follows a footpath. This footpath right here, which runs between this bungalow and this hedge. And what this does, it turns right shortly and runs along some countryside out to Horsington's east. It takes us to a farm we've already seen actually, at the foot of the village, and then it sort of turns back towards the mill and towards where we began. So I imagine there's nothing much out here apart from just countryside, but you never know. If there is something, I'll film it. Okay, slight change of plan. I'm on the wrong footpath. You know, sometimes reading the map when you're trying to walk around, it's not an easy task. I'm glad I'm actually on the wrong footpath actually, because this one looks a bit muddy and I haven't got my boots on for this episode. So yeah, I was actually on the wrong one here. I was heading out there into the countryside, which is going to be taking me away from Horsington if I carry on. So let's go back and try that again, shall we? There we go, now I'm on the right one. Now this is a bit less muddy, but apparently there's some cattle in this field, so hopefully they don't come and say hello. I don't mind cows and horses and sheep and pigs and things like that. Animals are what make this countryside great in some ways, I suppose, but I don't really want them following me when I'm trying to record. Anyway, this is my view. Glorious Lincolnshire countryside. Beautiful, isn't it? Okay, here we are then, back at the car where we started about 45 minutes ago. Now, we're not quite done with Horsington just yet. There's one more thing I do want to cover in this episode. If I turn the camera around here, you'll see the road running off towards Woodhull Spa. Now, that's a town in East Lindsey that we have yet to cover. In fact, thinking about it, it's not actually a town. It's one of those places that thinks it's a town, but it actually isn't. It doesn't have town status. That's something for another time, but we're heading down there now towards a wood, which will end this episode nicely. So here is the wood. It's no special, I'll be honest with you, but sometimes these things, you look at them on the map and you think to yourself, oh, that'd be nice to cover, but this really isn't much of anything, quite frankly. That happens sometimes. Just a muddy track that leads to the wood, which is over there, literally just a few yards beyond this sort of edge here. So it's not really much, to be fair, but yeah, anyway, it's something else for you, I suppose. Probably part of the Lincolnshire lime woods, actually, because it's very similar to things we've seen before in places such as Bardney and Golfo. There is a sign here that says Forestry Commission. That's probably seen better days, hasn't it? But yeah, there we go. Managed woodland, at least, shall we say. Nothing much more than that. I suppose it's a good place to bring your dog if you fancy coming out this way. So yeah, let's head out of Horsington and move on to the next one. And that will do us for Horsington. Next week we'll be in its neighbour, the parish to the south. A lot of people will know the next one for its former railway station, but I'm willing to bet less than half know anything about its much more ancient history. We'll soon find out. Join me there next week as we get familiar once again with the mighty River Witham. Thanks for watching this video, folks. Don't forget to like this episode if you haven't already. It really makes a difference with YouTube. If you're new here, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us a share too if you've got friends who'd like it. You can find all the links to my social media accounts below, as well as my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can donate to the channel. Also, if you've enjoyed this episode, have a look at some more videos in this series. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and I'm out.